Hello and welcome to Rowing Chat, the podcast network for rowers that's been going actually since 2013. My name's Rebecca Caro, and I try and get interesting guests on the show who are doing things in the sport of rowing that you possibly haven't heard of. And today's guest is a really, really good example of that. As most of you know, I come from the UK and I have raced a lot of the events in the British rowing season. And the pinnacle for many athletes, and also for many overseas athletes, is to race on the hallowed waters of Henley upon Thames. And that's where my guest comes in. Anne Buckingham, welcome to Rowing Chat.
It's lovely to be here. Greeting from beautiful, if slightly flooded, Henley on Thames.
Now, Anne, you're a very long-term Henley resident and obviously deeply embedded in rowing the sport for many years, but you work mainly with Henley Womens Regatta. Tell us a little bit about the event, just in case anyone's not heard of it.
Okay. Well, there's only 3 events on the Henley course, on the boomed course. They are Henley Women's, Henley Royal, and Henley Masters in that order. Henley Women's was founded back in the day when women were not particularly, there's a little bit of debate, there was the odd event here and there, allowed to race at Henley Royal pretty much at all. Henley Women's Regatta was started. I remember attending it when it was barely a day. It is now an absolutely crammed 3-day event. And we're attracting more and more people every year. And it's just fabulous. So last year we had, I just have the stat in front of me, 2,146 competing athletes, which in 3 days is a lot of athletes when you can only go 2 by 2. And it's a win at Henley Women's is a big thing. And increasingly, we're finding that crews are using it to get the experience against the competition and on the boomed course as well to get ready for Henley Royal. So a lot of crews are staying to race both.
So Henley Women's generally is in June. It's usually 10 days before Henley Royal Regatta. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And the classifications offered are junior, student, club and open?
So we have the championship events, we have the inspirational events, which is sort of a club event. Within that, there's a few different divisions. So there's some strictly academic, but those I believe are only open to British universities. So those people tend to be pretty familiar with Henley itself and the British rowing system, so I don't deal with them as often.
So let's talk about you and the job that you have. Miriam Luke is the chairman of Henley Women's, and she said, Anne, boy, have I got a job for you.
So Miriam Luke was the chair of Henley Women's. She was a very transformational chair, leading from Di Graham, who'd done an amazing job, and thankfully stayed on as vice chair for a while. Miriam Luke took over in 2013. And proceeded to add a number of roles. She didn't actually come to me first. She knew somebody. We'd never had somebody dealing specifically with overseas athletes, and we wanted to encourage them. She apparently asked 3 other people, and they all took one look at it and ran away. But 2 of those people told her she should ask me because I'd done something similar for Henley Masters.
Okay.
So I knew Miriam because Miriam's job for the Olympics was running the rowing village. And I had been an assistant to a national governing body for the Paralympics. So we'd gotten to know each other a bit then.
And your job is to guide and support overseas crews who want to come and race at Henley Women's.
So technically I will help anybody. So I help domestic crews as well to find housing and things like that. But usually they only need housing, whereas overseas crews need housing, need to know which airport's closest, how to get a boat, how to get oars, how to get here, what they're going to eat, what does a budget look like in terms of what does it cost to eat here versus what does it cost to eat in America or New Zealand or the Netherlands. And any little thing. I have found drivers for vans. I have helped plan day trips to London, Oxford, and Cambridge. Last year I helped plan a trip to the Netherlands. It was great. So that was fun. That was great. It's like, oh, you should stay here. You should do this. You should do that. This is near the Bosbaan. You could, I think they were a little surprised at the assistance I was able to provide. But we're multifaceted service.
So if you're an international crew and there is no institutional knowledge of the event, the regatta in your club, You can help them with everything from the absolute basics through to facilitating all the things they need to rent and borrow and organize for a visit to the regatta.
Yes. And then also, until this year, I helped with parents and supporters as well. We now have a dedicated volunteer for that. So yeah, we're here to make sure because they've got to fund it. And if they've got to fund it through parents and supporters and alumni, then they want to make sure that those people have a good time, but they're not going to be as focused on racing.
What sort of things do the supporters want to know about?
Dress code. Everybody wants to know about dress codes.
There is no dress code at Henley Women's.
There's a dress code for the chairman's enclosure, and they're glad there's a dress code for the chairman's enclosure because they want it to be, if it's Henley, they want a dress code. Overseas.
And what is the code?
So technically the dress code is only no sporting attire, no trackies, no unis or whatever like that. But I mean, let me tell you, these parents frequently come dressed to slay.
Yeah.
They have the hats. University of Tulsa didn't just have a blazer; it had the T in diamante all across the back. It was a thing. It's legend, absolute legend. Loved it. And as an American, I am absolutely here for it. Cornell had matching red and white hats. Schools are there in their garb. They go to town, and it's really good fun.
It does. It makes a real occasion of it. Tell us about what's the one thing that most international visitors either forget or neglect?
I wouldn't say that they forget. Do you mean when they're here, or
when
before
they're
they
planning and you have to come to the rescue?
Okay, so I wouldn't say that it's they forget or neglect. It is. Sorry, I'm getting a text message from an overseas crew even now. It's making my phone vibrate.
This is for real. It's happening.
It's happening right now. Like we're in the thick of the season. I had a great time last year. I helped an Australian crew, and it was fabulous. His wife was teasing him that he must have had a lover because first thing in the morning he would text me because that's when I was going to sleep, and then last thing at night he would text me because that's when I wasn't at the day job, and so she thought this was obviously quite a joke between them, but I didn't know about it until she arrived and introduced herself and said,
"I'm the wife, you're the lover."
And she said, "Oh, you must be so and so's lover," and I was. I had no idea. But yeah, she was brilliant. Once I was in on the joke, it was brilliant. But for a few seconds there, I was deeply confused. So, but it was great. But yeah, time zones. It's sometimes it's a helpful volunteer perk to have insomnia because you can answer that text message at 3 a.m. So yes. But yeah, we can help with what. So I wouldn't say it's what they forget or they neglect. It's what they don't know. If you haven't been here, you don't know. So as you will know from your years here in the UK, so Henley's a town of 11,000 people.
Yeah, it's small.
It's very small. It's adorable, and I can't wait for everybody listening to this to come here. But try adding over 2,000 athletes, then throw in the coaches and the supporters and the athletic trainers and the vendors and everybody else. And you easily realize there are nowhere near enough hotel rooms in Henley. And that's only worse for the Royal, which has over 4,000 athletes when you include the ones for qualifiers. And so as a consequence, again, coach, very good friends with him. We've been friends for a long time. Just first contacted me. He's like, yep. So we want to book, whatever hotel you've got the block bookings in. We need to book 15 of those hotel rooms.
It's a no, unless you want to go to Reading. And of course, Heathrow has lots of hotels. But you would want to drive to Henley from Heathrow.
And you're gonna, the scenery is great when you're stopped on Remington Hill, right? It's just fabulous. Budget that into your day. So people stay with families. People stay with host families and, get to know them. And depending on the crew and what their requirements are, what their budget is. Sometimes it's mattresses on the floors. Sometimes, I mean, you're definitely sharing rooms. You may or may not be sharing beds. There's a lot of leeway. Leeway can get pricey, but there's options for everybody, and we can, do it very, very cheaply. But there's restrictions in that, and it can be a bit pricier. And whether or not you're going to have the whole team stay in one house depends. Yes. Yeah, there are definitely houses that can take 9 athletes, but they will be that little bit further from the center of town.
Yeah. So do you want to walk, rent a van, bicycle, run down to the course because you needed a warm up?
There you go. And let me tell you, the Americans in particular, they don't want to learn to drive on the other side of the road.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
And what a lot of them, but the other thing a lot of them don't realize is it's not automatic. If you rent a car, it's probably not an automatic. And we're not equipped for that.
I once had a hideous ride, aged about 15, with my American resident uncle, who'd lived there for most of his adult life. And it was one of the scariest rides of my life. And years later, I spoke to his son, and Damien said to me, "You drove with my dad?" He said, regardless of the wrong side of the road thing, that he's the worst driver in the world. He once reversed out of his driveway, got hit by an oncoming car, whose irate driver leapt out and said, "Are you crazy, or are you a university professor?" He was a university professor.
He was a university professor, of course.
Yeah. Now, Henley and rowing. Rowing has a lot of unique language, and we all know the port, starboard, bow, stroke thing. But when it comes to Henley events, and I'm going to include Henley Royal in this as well, there's a lot of language which can be, let's say, reasonably hard to understand, or one of those things that sounds simple that isn't, or the reverse. It sounds complicated, but it's really simple. So let's kick off with my favorite and yours, stewards. That sounds confusing.
Well, I don't understand why you think this sounds confusing. I really don't understand. It's a men's fours event at Henley Royal, and Henley Royal is an event which is run by the stewards and has, for their entertainment, the members of the stewards enclosure, which is something you can be and a place you can be.
So
they also have their own lawn. So you have an event, you have the lawn, you have the enclosure, and you have the stewards themselves. They're all referred to as stewards, depending on who's talking to who about what.
In which context?
Even in context, it's fabulously confusing.
We should offer this to some stand-up comedian.
I mean, Saturday night. I mean, there is a Facebook group called Overheard at Henley Royal Regatta.
There is. It's very funny.
It's very funny. There you go. There you go. Yeah. Oh yeah. No. Germany. This one's Germany. Okay. This one's Germany. Yes. So there's Henley Women's, and then I'm forever correcting somebody. That does not mean there's Henley Men's.
Oh yes,
right?
Of course. Isn't it obvious?
How to get the big girl a little steamed under the collar kind of thing. So there's Henley Women's, there's Henley Royal. And depending on who you talk to, we're either the same regatta or we're absolutely at each other's throats and can't stand each other, neither of which are true. And we have a very good cooperative relationship. I would joke, I have to say that because I don't actually work for Henley Royal Regatta whatsoever, and I'm keen to keep that relationship good. So I'm certainly not going to slag them off, but it is quite good. My housing counterpart at Henley Royal, Isabel, fabulous woman. But there's just all kinds of terms. None of the events at Henley Royal, for example, actually give a clue as to what event they are by their name. So, so can you tell the Prince Edward from the Prince Philip, from the Princess Anne, the
Prince
ladies,
Albert.
the Prince Albert, there's, the whole royal family's there. And,
Meghan, let's hear it from Meghan. I think she should be the next patron.
Yeah, I think you need to bring that up with. I think you need to bring that up with somebody. That's
That was a
way
little
above my pay grade.
That was a
way
little
above my
unfair, but I couldn't resist.
Yeah. So it's all going back loads of ways. The women's tend to be named after places, thankfully. So at the moment you have the island, you have the Remenham.
So these are events, trophies, actually.
These are the trophy. The event is named after the trophy.
Okay.
And then of course
the event is then for student Cox Fours or whatever it is.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So they have two names. They have what's the classification of athlete and boat, and then the name of the trophy.
Yes. But almost the only time you'll hear it is either at the beginning, at the beginning of the race, when they're doing the roll call, or for prize giving. And it does get very. I've often said the secret key to the British is to. Hello?
You're still there. Don't worry.
Way too many text messages. Way too many text messages.
That's right. You're still with us. So what is the secret key?
If you know, you know. And if the British want you to know, they'll tell you.
Yeah. The British are quite mean like that. In fact, we often like having conversations on two different levels where you know the other side doesn't know what you're really talking about.
Oh, yeah. Oh, crikey. Sorry. Visually, this is not the best. This is not going to be your strongest one, and I apologize. But yeah, the text messages get pretty hot and heavy in the evenings here, sort of thing. So lots of them, lots of things to sort out.
Now, if people are interested in coming to race at Henley Women's Regatta, the regatta website is hwr.org.uk.
Yes.
How do they get a hold of you as part of the package?
As part of the package. So it's crew@hwr.org.uk. And they'll get me. The other popular one is my name just seems to be getting passed around. Ask somebody who went. Ask somebody who went and who they used and who they got in touch with. And very often you'll be handed my name, or you'll be handed the name of a steward, meaning an organizer of the Royal, not a competitor, not a member. And they can help you as well. But for Henley Women's, again, it's literally my job. I've been asked all sorts of mundane things. I've been asked sorts of wild and wacky things, and we've been able to deal with almost all of them. Very occasionally. So entry classifications, I don't do. Entry classifications, I don't do. But I can put you in touch with the lovely people who do. But your practicalities for housing, transport, food, water, and entertainment, I'm absolutely here.
I'd like you to retell the story about the request you had last year, which you said you'd never had before.
In the run-up to Henley Royal last year, I received a text from a coach who they and their team shall not be named. And I was asked, so if a private plane is taking off internationally from a city on the east coast of the US, where is the nearest place to Henley that they would land?
Woo!
The answer is Northolt.
Oh, that's a long way away. Right.
Because you need somewhere that's has a long enough runway that's open to commercial open to private jet traffic.
So Farnborough?
Yeah, because you need something that can land something big enough to take fuel to fly transatlantic.
Yeah, of course, Farnborough Airfield does do private, but perhaps they're not quite as big. Yes.
Not my understanding is they're not quite big enough.
So RAF Northolt, here we come. Well,
RAF Northolt.
You might have started something there. So people can now share private planes, perhaps, as long as sharing houses when they get to Henley is also on the cards.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Not one of mine, but someone else has dealt with, and if my driver's picking me up at the Ritz, what time do they need to pick me up to be there for my daughter's first race?
If your driver cannot use Google Maps, we strongly advise you to switch drivers.
Well, they're just making sure they can allow they've got the directions. They just want to make sure that they're going to be there in time, sort of thing.
Which is a good thing to ask.
It's because again, that traffic on Remenham Hill can be a little, but yeah, no, that plane knowledge is definitely stored. I don't know when I'll need to use it again, but
I'm sure you will.
It'll come up. It'll come up.
And it's been an absolute delight having you on the Rowing Chat podcast. Thank you so much. And now I have learned a whole lot more about what it's like coming from abroad to race in the UK.
It's all about the text messages, Rebecca, as you've seen. So we look forward to seeing you this summer.
Yeah, I will see you in the summer. And to all of our listeners, please stay in touch and send me ideas if you know someone else who you think I might enjoy interviewing on Rowing Chat. Till next time.